Mike Richards is now starring on Saga 960 Radio. He joins us from Mississauga, Ontario, now to talk all things sports. How you doing, Michael? Is it cold there?
No, it's not cold. Very warm, very hot, and I just apologize. I feel like the Hamilton Tiger Cats of television guests.
Don't know what to do. Showing up late?
How about not showing up at all? The offensive line. Did they know the rules? Is it their first time? Have they just put this together? I'm watching the team and I'm like, everyone understands there is a position ccalled running back. I mean, you should have someone who actually runs the ball, and they're not that hard to find. You can kind of find them. And I just do not understand. I mean, Coach O, I love him. Orlando Steinauer is a great coach, but they just are not in the same league as, quite frankly, I think when you take a look at the records, and I saw that you had, is there a mirage or a fraud up there right now? To me, when I take a look at Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and BC, who was surprisingly better, and guess what? Because their offensive line, they were just like turnstiles for the last couple of years, especially last year. When they said Mike Riley wasn't going to show up, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't either, because it's not fun to run for your life all the time. But I look at that, and maybe it's not a huge surprise. And I'm a little biased because I'm a bit of a Kahari Jones fan. They got it going in Montreal. And right now, look, it's a small sample size. They've only played one game. But are you telling me even with an eye test, and this technically does and kind of is preseason, I mean, that's really what we're talking about. But the Alouettes are on the same page. They look really good. And if I'm the rest of the East, right now, they're all probably going to chase the Alouettes. And unless the Tiger Cats do something amazing, I'm not expecting anything from the Red Blacks. You could see Montreal coming back to prominence in the East. It's been a while.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. The big news today is that Bo Levi Mitchell's going to miss multiple games, we're told, with a lower body injury. And that's catastrophic for not just the Calgary Stampeders, but the entire CFL. Because you want your stars on the field, Mike. It's what sells tickets. It's what gets people tuning into games. But are we not jumping out to too many generalities here 2 weeks into a season where there's been no preseason? Or is the angst and panic in those markets like yourself, you're close to Hamilton, warranted?
Again, small sample size, but there are certain things, like coaches would see in an eye test, like when coaches go to a combine. There's just certain things that you need to see to know that you're on the same page. And some of those teams, like the Stamps, I don't think they have enough talent. So regardless of who's a quarterback, if they play with Michael O'Connor, the big, tall Canadian kid, played at UBC. I mean, I don't know what you expect out of him necessarily. The Argos, Arbuckle probably will end up, I think, at some point, probably being their starting quarterback. And for the Ticats, it's protection. I mean, whether it's Dane or whether it's Jeremiah Masoli, I don't think it really matters. The guy that I'm really interested in, and it's funny that you mentioned names to sell tickets. So, Toronto's got a whole other different thing going on. And someone said, don't you think it'd be great if Bo Levi Mitchell came to Toronto? I'm like, well, if I went down to some of the hip areas of Toronto and said Bo Levi Mitchell, they'd think I was talking about pants. Dungarees. They would not think that I'm talking about a quarterback because they just don't know. The city is a terrible football city. There's almost little to no interest in football, period. And aside from fantasy football and what they want to see with the NFL because of their fantasy leagues, you can't have a college football a conversation in this town. You can't have a Canadian football conversation. And so, I think, when looking at the health of the league, I'm just really nervous about Toronto just because it stinks here. They're terrible. The people they're not interested. They obviously, it's Leafs first, but, Raptors obviously is a conversation. When the Blue Jays are in it, that's a conversation. The Argos are the last thing, and it scares me. Even as a diehard CFL fan, I could look at certain, I guess storylines that would bring people in. The one storyline to me would have been Nathan Rourke. I mean, he's pretty much a local guy. He's from Oakville. He was sensational with the Ohio Bobcats, and I think he's the real deal. If he's given some time, I mean, I realize Michael O'Connor's going to be under center, and he's, Canadian, and everyone's looking forward to seeing what he can do. But Nathan Rourke is a stud. And his younger brother this year is the quarterback starting this year for the Bobcats. So, I mean, his nickname was Air Canada. This kid can do a lot of stuff, and he's got a great mentor in front of him. I'll be really curious down the road to see what Nathan can do. And if I'm the Argos at some point, it's not winning just isn't good enough. I need a little bit of a story, and I think Nathan Rourke is. We'll wait. I guess we'll wait and see, but I think he is.
I don't want to let you go before we do talk about the Blue Jays because they are a contender, but you hosted a show on TSN 1050 for a lot of years in Toronto, and I got to ask you this. Obviously, there's more talk there about the NFL right now, I guess, I would assume. Like our good friend Jim Lang. You know him, you love him. If you know Jim Lang, you love him. And he said to me one time, Rod, Toronto is an NFL town. And I said, really, Jim? Then Regina's an NHL town because we like it a lot too. So is that what's the most buzz in that area right now?
Well, NFL as it pertains to people's, FanDuel and DraftKings and, you can't have a football conversation in this. If you go to downtown Regina, if I go to Winnipeg, if I go to Calgary, I go to Edmonton, we can talk about football things, even high school football. We could talk about football. The NFL here only goes as far as it does for gambling. Like it's not necessarily dissected as that, oh my God, we're going to watch every single NFL game. They'll watch the games because they have their fantasy leagues attached to it. It's not a football town at all. I wouldn't say it's an NFL town. If it was, how come every game wasn't sold out when Buffalo came here? Well, then the excuse was, well, it's not really our team. Well, at some point, I got to tell you, they tried bowl games up here. Nothing that's not really realistic to also think that the NFL would come to Toronto, because I don't think it ever come here to Toronto. And so the talk right now, aside from probably diehard Leaf fans who are delusional, think something's going to happen this year and it won't, it's the Blue Jays. But after Stringer going out like he just did, seeing where they're at, seeing how Tampa's playing, and the teams in front of them, so that's the Yankees, that's and in the case of the wild card, so you're talking about the A's and you're talking about the Bo Sox. They were a bit of a whipping boy for Seattle, who really aren't that good. It's not this year. They don't have to be all in this year. So I'm not really worried about whether they make the playoffs. It's more about next year. So if you want to rest Springer now or whatever that leg is going to be, to me, it's like then rest him, because this isn't the year to be all in. This isn't the time to blow your investment. The Blue Jays, I don't think. I mean, it's going to be decided in September anyway with a lot of head-to-heads. They got seven games against Tampa Bay, but I just don't see it. They don't have the relief pitching. They've got one closer. They don't have enough. They're not in the same league, but they could be next year. So I'm not really worried about whether they make it this year or not. I think they've been playing with a little bit of house money. I think Vladdy's been sensational. Hernandez has been great. They've got a bunch of guys. It's a cool story. It's next year. It's not this year.
Ryan McCarthy watching in New York says the only, and I mean only, way the NFL comes to Toronto is through relocation, and that might require one or more times to relocate to international locations like London. Robert Munich watching on YouTube says, hope Mike is doing well. We miss him here in Calgary. His morning show on the Fan 960 was legendary. What can you update your Western Canadian fans on your status, Mike?
Well, health-wise, it's been pretty good. It's a bit of adjustment, and I knew that was going to happen. So people who have followed along after rectal cancer, then they give you an ostomy bag. That's what you have at that point. So I had that for 6 years and became quite difficult. So I finally in March was able to get what they call a reversal. And so what has happened is I now sort of fully function, even though sometimes it's like playing with no goalie. Be a little panicky. It's a little difficult, but it's certainly a million miles better. I immediately, probably the last time I was on here, I'm down probably almost 40 pounds since the last time you saw me, and a whole bunch of pant sizes. So that feels a little better for the ego and back to the size that I normally was. So I do feel very healthy. I, in all honesty, sort of been waiting for this business to do a bunch of things, and with COVID, it has been slow to painfully people not doing anything. So I think there's still going to be some musical chairs in this country when it comes to sports radio. I'm just waiting for that to happen. But a lot of people don't know. It's the staff that they have right now currently on some of these stations, quite frankly, just aren't very good. But right now with COVID and the protocols and who's moving in and who's moving out, there's a little bit of it looked like musical chairs at one point, and just the music hasn't started again. I'm waiting for it to stop. So I think for a lot of people who are waiting to see what's going to happen, you might have to wait a little bit longer. But there are going to be some changes. Trust me. And I'm talking nationally as well. So cross your fingers, but you never know. Things could get exciting here.
Well, producer Clark said to me, Mike's been teasing an announcement for a while. Today might be the day. But you're saying just hold our bingo cards a little longer. That's what you're telling us.
Yeah, just hold on to the cards. It's going to be a little bit, but I mean, it's understandable. And by the way, anti-vaxxing. I mean, did that happen back when we had polio? Did that happen? Did that happen when people were being cured so the planet wouldn't die? And then somehow there are those that are going on the internet and looking at Google and telling me that they know more. I mean, look, some of the guys are telling me stuff. They went to Seneca College. They went to SAIT. I'm sorry, you're smarter than these people that have gone in the scientific industry for like 40 years. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you really don't need the shots. Okay, well, it's called thinning the herd. I just think that, what Winnipeg did the other night, and I'm not sure what it was at Mosaic, but having the little passport saying that you're double vaccinated, more people are going to feel comfortable. Everyone gets into the building. I'm for that.
Well, me too. And I was in Winnipeg for the game, and yeah, we showed our photo ID and our vaccine card, and boom, in we went. I was not at the Rider game. They're not doing that, but they had a decent enough crowd for sure. Tens of thousands showing up for it. And as a matter of fact, this is my last question for you, Mike. And because I didn't know what to ask you, but the one that's kind of burning on me the most is the COVID situation in Southern Ontario. If you don't mind, I mean, the Argos have their home opener Friday night. Saturday. The Blue Bombers are there. I'm assuming attendance is capped. Like, I don't get it. Toronto FC, they had a game, right? Didn't they have 15,000 there? Like, is it as confusing for you living there as it is for us watching from the rest of Canada?
Yeah, I never know from a day-to-day basis what they're doing in terms of people going into buildings. In fact, we talked to this morning the general manager and coach of the Mississauga Steelheads of the OHL. I said, so what's the deal with people coming in and watch the games? He goes, I don't know. we don't know. It's every day you kind of have to wait to see if they're changing the rules. I'm going to the Queen's Plate this Sunday. So they'll have about 5,000 people. Normally there's like 30,000 people. But what is the thinking there? Like it's hard to find consistency, certainly when people want to get together in sporting events is obviously a big part of this world. So, are they going to go to the passport thing? I can tell you that Jim Lawson, the CEO of Woodbine, really loved what the Blue Bombers did. And so, you know what? If that's the road we're going down in terms of showing your little vaccination or whatever it is, do that, because to me that makes sense. Because can we just get into the ballparks? Because honestly, we know it's a gate-driven league for the CFL. If you can't get in and see the games, especially in places like in Toronto and Hamilton, Ottawa, we're going to be in trouble if we don't get people in that park.
Mike, we thought by now, or at least I did, that we would have huge crowds in the CFL. We were led to believe that, not by the CFL, I think, but by the government and health officials, that this is where we would be. So how they're even playing right now, I have no idea. I'm just so glad they are. And obviously you watched all the games on the weekend, right? Like that's what we should, I think, be talking about in sports radio, not low attendance or this or that. I have no idea how the CFL is still alive. Just thank God they are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Dave Bastel, my partner on the air, and has been for 10 years. I mean, we're diehard guys. We've been going to games since literally we were born. It is part of what we do. And you to talk about a Labor Day or the playoffs or the first game, like all these things that we're used to seeing. I mean, it was just wonderful to see. And I said, Mosaic is just. Well, I never thought I would see a facility that looked like that in Canada. I just never did. And so the fact that we've got this even starting, I think it's momentum forward, because as you said, the alternative was no CFL, and I know people are getting their nuts in a knot over XFL or whatever it is. I'm not so sure what the talks were about. I don't even know how realistically it was in terms of a business being intertwined with each other. But if there is something there, and someone pushes me and said, "Do you want the XFL being a part of the CFL?" I said, "Well, if it's either that or nothing, then yes." But I wasn't privy to the conversations. I don't know what the business plan was. And I'm not saying that we go to 4 downs and all those other things. I just think for the CFL and for its business model and for what they just went through, I'm certainly going to be open to conversation. I'm not going to just slam the door, and I'm not, one of those people that's going to, die on a hill because of ball size, field size, all those things that I love about the league. But I'm going to be open to whatever it is they think that they can do. Certainly, if it's financially, if you start sharing things. I mean, I don't know. As I said, I wasn't privy to the conversations, but I do know that I couldn't imagine my life in Canada with no CFL. Last year was bad enough, but if it really did come to an end, I have no words for that. I would completely crush.
Well, and that's why I say kudos to whomever's responsible, because I have no idea how they're doing it, but they are. And that's what I'd like to celebrate. Michael, we are out of time, but it's always great to see you and spend time with you, sir. You're sounding like $1 million, and I look forward to for this update in your life.
And congratulations to the guy with the helicopter who went to Dairy Queen. He's the greatest guy I've ever known.
How is that national?
Hey, that's not a joke. That's not a joke. That's serious. That's great stuff.
How is that national news? Guy lands his helicopter and goes in and gets a couple blizzards. What's the problem?
And they arrest the guy. What's the RCMP? Give him a snow cone, whatever it is.
That's the news.
Saying,
yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy. Mike Richards, the radio legend from Saga 960 in Mississauga.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.